The alarm bells rang through the crystal towers of Zephyria Prime like the death songs of a dying world. Elder Counselor Thren pressed his six-fingered hand against the viewing wall of the High Council chamber and watched his civilization burn. Below, the capital city of New Harmony lay in ruins. The beautiful floating gardens that had taken 3 centuries to grow were now twisted metal and ash. The peaceful Zephyrian people, who had not known war for over 1,000 years, ran through the streets in panic as death rained from the sky. "The northern shield generators are down," reported Commander Vela, her normally blue skin now pale with fear. "The Vrak have broken through our orbital defenses. They're landing ground forces in Sector 7. Thren closed his ancient eyes. The Vrak swarm had finally come to finish what they started long ago. These insect-like creatures had been the enemies of peace-loving species for millions of years. They consumed everything in their path, turning beautiful worlds into empty husks. "What about the evacuation fleets?" Thren asked, though he already knew the answer from Vela's expression. "Destroyed, Elder. The Vrak caught them at the jump points. No survivors," Vela's voice cracked. "We have maybe 6 hours before they reach the civilian shelters." Thren looked around the council chamber. Of the 12 seats, only 3 were filled. The other elders had either fled or were already dead. The mighty Zephyrian Republic, which had brought peace to this sector of the galaxy for 2,000 years, would end today. "Sir," whispered Communications Officer Jek from his station, "I'm receiving surrender demands from the Vrak Queen herself. She says if we submit now, she will make our deaths quick." The Vrak never took prisoners. They saw other life forms as food or obstacles to be removed. Their queen was offering mercy only because she was curious about Zephyrian technology. Once she had what she wanted, every living being on this world would die. Thren walked to the great communication console at the center of the chamber. This device could send messages across the entire galaxy, reaching every civilized world. Many times he had used it to call for help during smaller crises. The Altarian Federation had always answered. The Centauri Alliance had sent aid. Even the proud Andromedans had offered assistance in the past, but they were all too far away now. By the time any rescue fleet could reach Zephyria Prime, there would be nothing left to save. "Jek," Thren said slowly, "are you able to reach the forbidden frequencies?" The young officer's 4 eyes went wide. "Sir, you mean the quarantine channels? Those have been sealed by galactic law for over 3,000 years. Can you reach them?" Thren repeated. Jek's hands shook as he worked his controls. "Yes, Elder, but those frequencies only lead to dead systems. The Council declared them unsafe for contact. There's nothing out there but empty space and old legends." Thren had been alive for 400 years. He remembered stories his grandfather had told him, stories that were now forbidden by the Galactic Council, stories about a species that had once made the entire galaxy tremble with fear. A race of beings so violent and dangerous that they had been locked away in a quarantined system, cut off from the rest of civilized space. The stories said they came from a world so deadly that simply surviving there made them into living weapons, a planet where everything tried to kill everything else, where the weather could crush you, the animals could tear you apart, and the very air could poison your lungs. The Council had declared these stories to be myths. They said no species could survive on such a world. But Thren's grandfather had claimed to have met one of them long ago, before the quarantine was put in place. They called themselves humans, the old Zephyrian had whispered to young Thren, and they were the most terrifying thing I had ever seen. Not because they were cruel, but because they would not stop. No matter how badly hurt, no matter how impossible the odds, they just kept fighting. Another explosion shook the building. Through the viewing wall, Thren could see Vrak dropships landing in the city center. Time was running out. "Open the channel, Jek." The officer hesitated. "Elder, even if something receives the message, the legends say those beings are monsters. They might be worse than the Vrak." "My boy," Thren said gently, "nothing could be worse than the Vrak." Jek's hands moved over the controls. The communication array turned toward a distant part of the galaxy, toward a small yellow star that had been marked as forbidden for 3 millennia. "Channel open, Elder." Thren leaned over the microphone. He did not know if anyone would hear this message. He did not know if the stories were true, but his people were dying, and he had to try everything. "This is Elder Counselor Thren of the Zephyrian Republic, broadcasting on emergency frequency 77 Alpha. Our world is under attack by the Vrak swarm. Our defenses have failed. Our people are dying. We have no ships, no weapons, no hope. He paused as another blast shook the chamber. Dust fell from the ceiling. I'm sending this message to the Sol system, to the beings called humans. The Galactic Council says you do not exist. They say the stories about your people are just myths. But if you are real, if you can hear this, we need help. The Vrak will kill everyone on this world. Men, women, children, all will die. Thren's voice grew stronger as he continued. We are not warriors. We have never learned to fight. But the old stories say your people understand fighting. They say you come from a world that made you strong. If this is true, if you are out there, please help us. We cannot offer you anything except our gratitude. We cannot promise you reward. We can only ask you to save innocent lives. The building shook again. Through the walls, they could hear the sound of Vrak weapons getting closer. Our coordinates are attached to this message. We do not know how long we can hold out. Maybe hours, maybe less. If anyone receives this transmission, if anyone cares about justice in this galaxy, please help us. This is our final message. This is our last hope. Thren ended the transmission and sat back in his chair. Jack looked at him with a mixture of hope and terror. Do you think they heard us, Elder? Thren stared out at the burning city. In the distance, he could see the tall forms of Vrak warriors moving through the streets. Soon they would reach the government district. Soon this would all be over. I do not know, my boy, but I have heard that humans have one saying that defines them above all others. What is that, sir? Thren smiled sadly as the sound of footsteps echoed in the corridor outside the chamber. Heavy, clicking footsteps that could only belong to Vrak soldiers. They say that when monsters come for the innocent, humans become bigger monsters. The door to the council chamber began to glow as Vrak plasma cutters started to burn through it. Thren, Vela, and Jek stood together facing the entrance. They would die as their people had lived, with dignity and hope. But somewhere in the depths of space, racing toward a small blue and green planet orbiting a yellow star, a desperate message carried the coordinates of a dying world and a plea that would wake something the galaxy had tried very hard to forget. Admiral Sarah Chen was drinking her morning coffee in the command center of Luna Station when the universe changed forever. She had been reviewing supply reports for the new Mars colonies when Lieutenant Rodriguez burst through the door, his face pale with excitement and fear. Admiral, you need to hear this right now. Sarah set down her coffee cup and looked at the young officer. In her 30 years of military service, she had seen Rodriguez handle everything from asteroid impacts to solar flares without losing his composure. Whatever had shaken him like this had to be serious. What is it, Lieutenant? We've received a transmission, ma'am. From outside the solar system. Sarah felt her heart skip a beat. Humanity had only achieved faster-than-light travel 6 months ago. Their first interstellar probe had just reached Alpha Centauri. They were not supposed to be receiving messages from alien civilizations yet. Play it. The voice that filled the command center was unlike anything Sarah had ever heard. It sounded old and tired, speaking in broken English that suggested the translator was struggling with human language. This is Elder Counselor Thren of the Zephyrian Republic, broadcasting on emergency frequency 77 Alpha. Our world is under attack by the Vrak swarm. Our defenses have failed. Our people are dying. Sarah listened to the entire message in stunned silence. When it ended, the command center was quiet except for the hum of computers and the distant sound of Earth's orbital traffic. How long ago was this transmitted? She asked. 47 hours ago, ma'am. It took this long to reach us because of the distance involved. Sarah walked to the main display screen and looked at Earth hanging in the darkness below. The blue and green planet looked so peaceful from here. It was hard to believe that somewhere in the galaxy, an entire civilization was crying out for help. Rodriguez, get me everything we have on these frequencies. I want to know where this message came from and how they knew to contact us. Over the next 6 hours, Sarah's team made discoveries that changed everything humanity thought they knew about their place in the universe. The transmission had come from a star system over 2,000 light-years away. The aliens who sent it had used mathematical concepts that proved they possessed technology far beyond anything humanity had developed. But most shocking of all was what they found when they traced the signal back to its origin. Admiral, said Chief Communications Officer Park, we're not the first ones to receive messages on these frequencies. There are records going back thousands of years. Automated responses, acknowledgement signals, even what looks like shipping manifests. Shipping manifests? Yes, ma'am. It appears that at some point in the distant past, this solar system was part of a regular trade network. Ships came and went on a regular schedule. But then about 3,000 years ago, everything stopped. Sarah studied the data scrolling across her screen. The pattern was clear. For millions of years, the Sol system had been connected to a vast galactic civilization. Then suddenly it had been cut off completely. Park, I want you to try something. Send a message back on the same frequency. Keep it simple. Just acknowledgement that we received their distress call. Ma'am, are you sure? If there really is a galactic civilization out there, making contact could change everything. Sarah thought about the fear in the alien's voice. Somewhere in the darkness between the stars, people were dying. She did not know what humans could do to help, but she knew they had to try. Send the message. The response came back in less than 20 minutes. This time, it was not the tired voice of the elder counselor. It was a different alien speaking much faster and with obvious excitement. Humans? You are real? The council said you were myths. Please, if you can help us, we need ships, weapons, soldiers. The Vrak have taken the northern continent. We have maybe 12 hours before they reach the civilian shelters. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine, not because of the desperate plea for help, but because of what the alien had said. The council thought humans were myths. Rodriguez, get me Director Williams at Earth Intelligence. I need to know everything we can find out about why aliens think we're mythical. The answer came back 3 days later, and it was worse than Sarah had imagined. Director Williams appeared on the main screen looking exhausted. Behind him, Sarah could see dozens of analysts working at computer terminals. Admiral, what we've discovered is disturbing. Based on the alien transmissions we've intercepted, it appears that humanity was deliberately isolated from galactic civilization. There's something called the Galactic Council that made the decision to quarantine our entire solar system. Why? Williams looked uncomfortable. According to the records we've been able to translate, it was fear. They were afraid of us. Afraid of what? We've never even left our own solar system until now. That's not entirely true, Admiral. The records suggest that at some point in Earth's history, humans did have contact with galactic civilization. But something happened, something that made them decide we were too dangerous to be allowed into open space. Sarah stared at the screen. How dangerous could we have been? We barely had gunpowder 3,000 years ago. Admiral, you need to understand something about the galaxy we're dealing with. Based on the transmissions, most alien species come from what they call garden worlds. Planets with mild weather, friendly animals, and stable environments. They think of war as something that happens between governments, not something that ordinary people know how to do. Sarah was beginning to understand. And Earth? Earth is what they call a death world, a planet where everything is trying to kill you, where survival requires constant struggle. The records we found suggest that when humans first made contact with galactic civilization, we were so much better at fighting than anyone else that we terrified them. The pieces were starting to fit together. Sarah looked around the command center at her crew. These were people who had trained for years to handle emergencies in space. They were used to radiation, equipment failures, and the constant threat of death. She had never thought of them as particularly tough, but compared to beings from gentle garden worlds, they probably seemed like living weapons. Williams, what happened to cut us off? Near as we can tell, there was some kind of war. Humans fought on the side of smaller species against an aggressive empire. We won. But the victory scared everyone so badly that the Galactic Council decided to quarantine Earth and hope we would eventually forget about the rest of the galaxy. Sarah felt anger building in her chest. While humanity had spent 3,000 years thinking they were alone in the universe, an entire galactic civilization had been deliberately hiding from them. Admiral, Rodriguez interrupted. We're receiving another transmission from the Zephyrian system. This time the voice was barely a whisper. Any human ships, please respond. The Vrak have taken the capital. We are in the emergency shelters, but they are breaking through our defenses. If anyone can hear this, we have perhaps 6 hours. Please, we are dying. Sarah looked around the command center. She could see the same thought in everyone's eyes. Somewhere in the galaxy, innocent people were being murdered while the species that could help them hid in fear. Rodriguez, get me fleet command. I want every available ship prepared for immediate departure. Ma'am, we only have 12 interstellar-capable vessels, and they're all exploration ships. Sarah smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. Then I guess it's time the galaxy remembered what humans are capable of. Send a message to the Zephyrian system. Tell them help is coming. As alarms began ringing throughout Luna Station and emergency crews rushed to prepare the human fleet for its first interstellar mission, Sarah looked out at the stars and wondered what they would find when they arrived. The galaxy thought humans were myths. They were about to discover their mistake. The human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Zephyrian system to find hell waiting for them. Commander Marcus Torres stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, the lead ship of humanity's first interstellar rescue mission, and stared at the tactical display in horror. 12 human vessels had answered the alien distress call, but what they found was beyond anything they had imagined. The Zephyrian homeworld burned like a dying coal in the darkness. Massive alien ships, black as midnight and bristling with weapons, surrounded the planet in a tight blockade. Debris clouds marked the spots where the defending fleet had died. Even from this distance, Torres could see the glow of fires on the planet's surface. "Jesus Christ," whispered Navigation Officer Kim. "How many of those things are there?" "Sensors show 237 enemy vessels," reported Lieutenant Hayes from the tactical station. "They're unlike anything in our databases. Organic construction, integrated weapon systems. They look more grown than built." Torres activated his communication system. "All human ships, this is Defiance Actual. We are looking at a full-scale invasion in progress. Unknown enemy force has orbital superiority and is conducting ground operations. Rules of engagement are weapons-free. Protect civilian lives at all costs." Admiral Chen's voice crackled over the radio from her flagship, the UES Indomitable. "Marcus, we need to establish contact with survivors before we engage. Find out where the civilians are hiding." Torres nodded to his communications officer. "Send a tight beam transmission to the planet. Any surviving Zephyrian forces? This is the human rescue fleet. Please respond." The answer came back immediately, filled with static and fear. "Human ships? You came? Oh, blessed stars, you actually came." The voice was young and female, speaking in accented English. "This is Commander Vela of the Zephyrian Defense Force. We have approximately 40,000 civilians in underground shelters across the southern continent. The Vrak are trying to break through our shields, but we can hold for maybe 2 more hours." "Understood, Commander Vela. We are moving to assist. Can you provide landing coordinates?" There was a pause, and when Vela spoke again, her voice was uncertain. "Human Commander, I must ask, and how many ships do you have?" "Our sensors show only 12 vessels. The Vrak have over 200. Torres looked around the bridge at his crew. They were outnumbered 20-1 by an enemy that had just destroyed an entire star fleet. By any reasonable military calculation, this was suicide. "Vela, this is all we have, but we're humans. Trust me, it's enough." What Torres did not tell the alien commander was that each human ship had been built for survival in Earth's hostile solar system. Their hulls were designed to withstand asteroid impacts and solar radiation. Their crews were trained to function during equipment failures, decompression events, and hostile boarding actions. Every human aboard these ships had grown up on a planet where nature tried to kill them every day. The Vrak had never faced anything like them. "All ships, this is Admiral Chen. We're going in fast and hard. Target the ships closest to the planet first. Draw their attention away from the civilian shelters." The human fleet accelerated toward the enemy formation at a speed that made the alien ships seem to be standing still. The first Vrak vessel they encountered was a massive creature that looked like a cross between a warship and a giant insect. Its weapons opened fire when the humans were still thousands of kilometers away. The Vrak plasma beams were powerful enough to melt most alien ship hulls in seconds. But the UES Defiance had been built to fly through solar storms and survive impacts with space debris traveling at incredible speeds. The alien weapons left black marks on her hull but did not penetrate. "Return fire," Torres ordered. Human weapons had been designed for a different kind of warfare. Instead of elegant energy beams, they used simple kinetic projectiles, pieces of metal accelerated to incredible speeds. The Vrak ship's organic armor, which had evolved to stop plasma weapons, offered no protection against solid objects moving at significant fractions of the speed of light. The human railgun rounds punched through the alien vessel like bullets through paper. The Vrak ship broke apart in a brilliant explosion that lit up the local space. "One down," Hayes reported. 236 to go. But the human ships were not trying to destroy the entire Vrak fleet. That would take too long, and the civilians on the planet were running out of time. Instead, they were doing what humans did best. They were improvising. "Kim, take us into the atmosphere," Torres ordered. "We're going down to the surface." "Sir, our ships aren't designed for atmospheric flight." Torres smiled grimly. "Kim, Our ships were designed to land on planets with crushing gravity, poisonous air, and constant storms. I think we can handle a little atmosphere. The UES Defiance plunged through Zephyria Prime's atmosphere like a falling meteor, followed by 3 other human ships. Behind them, the rest of the fleet engaged the Vrak in orbit, drawing their attention away from the planet's surface. The human ships landed near the civilian shelters with impacts that shook the ground for kilometers in all directions. Their doors opened, and the first humans ever seen by the Zephyrian people stepped out onto an alien world. Commander Vela was waiting for them at the entrance to the largest shelter, along with a group of Zephyrian civilians. When she saw Torres and his Marines approaching, her 4 eyes went wide with shock. Humans were nothing like the graceful, slender beings that made up most of galactic civilization. They were thick and heavy, with dense bone structure and powerful muscles developed from a lifetime of fighting Earth's high gravity. Their faces were scarred from exposure to radiation and extreme weather. They moved with the careful, efficient motions of predators who had learned that every environment was potentially lethal. To the peaceful Zephyrians, who had never known violence until the Vrak came, the humans looked like walking weapons. Commander Vela, Torres removed his helmet, revealing a face marked by years of hard living. I'm Commander Torres, United Earth Space Force. We're here to get your people to safety. Vela stared at the human officer. She had expected rescuers, but these beings looked more dangerous than some of the Vrak warriors she had seen. Torres was covered in scars, his eyes were hard as steel, and when he moved, it was with the fluid grace of something that had learned to kill efficiently. You really are humans, she whispered. The council said your people were extinct. They said the stories about the Deathworld warriors were just myths. Torres looked around at the burning city in the distance, where Vrak forces were advancing toward the shelter. The council lied to you. We're very much alive, and we're very good at what we do. The ground shook as Vrak artillery struck somewhere nearby. Dust fell from the shelter ceiling, and several Zephyrian civilians cried out in fear. How long until they reach us? Torres asked. Maybe an hour, Vela replied. Our shields are failing. Torres activated his radio. All human ground teams, this is Torres. We have 40,000 civilians to evacuate and maybe an hour to do it. I want solutions, not problems. The response came from Marine Captain Jackson, whose team had landed near the eastern shelter complex. Sir, my engineers are looking at the Zephyrian shield generators. These things are way more advanced than ours, but they're not built for combat. We can modify them, but it's going to take time. How much time? Give me 30 minutes and I can turn these shields into something that will stop Vrak weapons for at least 6 hours. Torres looked at Vela, who was staring at him with amazement. Your people can modify our technology? But you just arrived. You have never seen our equipment before. Torres shrugged. Lady, humans have been fixing broken equipment under pressure since we invented tools. Your shields might be fancy, but broken is broken. What Vela did not understand was that human technology had developed very differently from the rest of the galaxy. While alien civilizations had grown up on peaceful worlds where equipment rarely failed, humans had learned to build things that could be repaired quickly under terrible conditions. Every human engineer was trained to fix anything with whatever materials were available. More importantly, every human had grown up in an environment where failure meant death. They did not give up when things looked hopeless. They did not surrender when the odds were against them. They just found another way to fight. As Captain Jackson's team began modifying the Zephyrian shields, Torres organized the civilian evacuation. The human ships could carry more people than their designers had ever intended, because humans were used to cramped conditions and emergency rationing. Commander Torres, Vela said as she watched human Marines loading Zephyrian families into transport shuttles. I have to ask, why did you come? Your people do not know us. We have nothing to offer you. Why risk your lives for strangers? Torres paused in his work and looked at the alien officer. Around them, human soldiers were treating wounded Zephyrian civilians with the same care they would show their own people. Vela, there's something you need to understand about humans. We might be from a death world, and we might be good at fighting, but we did not become the dominant species on Earth by being cruel. We survived because we learned to work together. We learned to protect the weak and help the innocent. He gestured toward the shelter where human medics were treating injured Zephyrian children. When we heard your distress call, we did not see aliens. We saw people who needed help. That's all we needed to know. Vela stared at the human commander with growing wonder. The galaxy's most feared warriors had crossed 2,000 light-years of space to save strangers, and they were asking for nothing in return. In the distance, the sound of Vrak weapons grew closer, but for the first time since the invasion began, Vela felt hope. The Deathworld warriors had come to Zephyria Prime, and they were not here to conquer. They were here to protect. The Vrak Queen had ruled her swarm for over 3,000 years, and in all that time, she had never encountered a species that truly frightened her. She floated in the command chamber of her massive flagship, surrounded by the constant chatter of her warrior drones reporting from across the Zephyrian system. The conquest was proceeding exactly as planned. The weak, peace-loving aliens had been crushed with minimal losses. Soon their world would be stripped of all useful resources, and the Vrak would move on to the next target. Then something impossible happened. My queen buzzed her primary tactical drone, its voice filled with confusion. "We are detecting new ships entering the system. Unknown design. They do not match any species in our databases." The Queen's multiple eyes focused on the tactical display. 12 small vessels had appeared at the system's edge, moving toward the planet at high speed. They were tiny compared to her fleet, barely worth noticing. "Destroy them," she commanded without interest. But when her forward scouts engaged the unknown ships, something went wrong. The alien vessels did not flee as expected. Instead, they accelerated directly into the Vrak formation, their weapons blazing. The Queen watched in growing amazement as one of her heavy cruisers simply disappeared in a ball of fire. These unknown aliens had weapons that could punch through Vrak armor like it was tissue paper. "What species is this?" she demanded. Her intelligence drone consulted its vast memory banks. The ship configuration matches ancient records from the restricted archives. "My queen, these appear to be humans." A sound like breaking glass filled the command chamber as the Queen's mandibles clicked together in shock. Humans, the mythical Deathworlders? "They are supposed to be extinct." "Perhaps the records were incorrect, my queen. Should I order a full engagement?" The Queen hesitated. The old files about humans were classified by the Galactic Council, but she had been alive when the quarantine was established. She remembered the fear in the voices of the council members when they spoke of the species from Sol 3. "No, let me observe these creatures first. I want to see if the legends are true." What the Vrak Queen discovered over the next hour changed her understanding of warfare forever. The human ships did not fight like any civilized species. Instead of maintaining safe distances and trading long-range fire, they closed to point-blank range and engaged in brutal ship-to-ship combat. When their weapons ran out of ammunition, they rammed enemy vessels with their own hulls. When their ships were damaged beyond repair, the crews evacuated to other vessels and continued fighting. But it was the boarding actions that truly amazed. Her Captain Lisa Rodriguez led the assault on a Vrak hive cruiser with 43 human Marines. They cut their way through the ship's organic hull using industrial cutting torches and entered the vessel through wounds that bled acidic slime. The Vrak warriors who met them were 7 foot tall, insectoid creatures with razor-sharp claws and natural armor that could deflect most energy weapons. They had evolved for combat in the dark, cramped corridors of their ships. They should have slaughtered the smaller human invaders with ease. Instead, Rodriguez and her Marines fought through the ship like a plague of destruction. The humans carried simple kinetic weapons, guns that fired metal bullets instead of elegant energy beams. But they used them with a skill that spoke of lifetimes spent in combat. More importantly, they fought with a ferocity that the Vrak had never seen before. When Marine Corporal Williams was slashed across the chest by a Vrak warrior's claws, he did not fall back to receive medical attention. He stepped forward and shot his attacker in the face, then continued advancing with blood soaking his uniform. When Sergeant Park ran out of ammunition, she drew a simple metal knife and began fighting hand-to-hand with creatures twice her size. The Vrak warriors, who had never encountered beings that would fight with bladed weapons in the age of plasma guns, fell back in confusion. The Queen watched the battle through her drone's eyes and felt something she had not experienced in centuries: fear. "My Queen," reported her tactical officer, "the humans have captured 3 of our cruisers and are using them against us. They are turning our own weapons on our fleet." The Queen's attention focused on the battle display. The humans had indeed captured Vrak vessels, but they were not simply commandeering them. They were modifying the ships in real time, adapting alien technology to human tactics. "How is this possible?" she demanded. "Our ships are grown, not built. Their control systems are integrated with our biology. No alien species should be able to operate them." Her science drone provided the answer. "Analysis suggests the humans are not trying to understand our technology, my queen. They are simply forcing it to work for them through mechanical means. They appear to be improvising." The queen stared at the display as a captured Vrak ship began firing on her own forces. The humans had bypassed centuries of biological engineering by simply cutting wires and rerouting power systems. It was crude, primitive, and absolutely effective. But it was what happened next that truly shook her. The human ship UES Indomitable, Admiral Chen's flagship, suffered a direct hit from a Vrak plasma cannon. The blast tore through the vessel's hull and destroyed its main engines. By any reasonable standard, the ship was dead in space. Instead of evacuating or surrendering, the human crew did something the Queen had never seen before. They turned their crippled vessel into a weapon. "All ships, this is Admiral Chen," came the transmission from the dying human vessel. "Indomitable is taking critical damage, but we're not done yet. Engineering, give me everything you have left." The Queen watched in fascination as the human ship began accelerating toward her flagship. The vessel was venting atmosphere and debris, its hull glowing red-hot from internal fires, but it continued to move. "My queen, the human vessel is on a collision course. Should we destroy it?" The queen studied the approaching ship. The humans aboard were certainly dead or dying. This had to be some kind of automated attack system. "Hail the vessel. Demand their surrender." The response came immediately. Admiral Chen's face appeared on the main screen, her uniform torn and her face streaked with blood. Behind her, the Queen could see fires burning and hear the sound of explosions. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Space Force. I don't know if you can understand me, but I have a message for your queen." The Vrak Queen leaned forward. In 3,000 years of conquest, no enemy commander had ever addressed her directly before a final attack. "What is your message, human?" Chen smiled, and it was the most terrifying expression the Queen had ever seen. "Tell your queen that humans don't surrender. Tell her that we don't run away. And tell her that when you threaten innocent people, you get our attention." The UES Indomitable struck the Vrak flagship at near light speed. The impact vaporized both vessels instantly and sent a shockwave through the enemy formation that destroyed dozens of nearby ships, but Admiral Chen had achieved something more important than a tactical victory. She had shown the Vrak that humans would rather die fighting than live in defeat. The Queen, who had survived the collision only because she had been transferred to a secondary vessel minutes before impact, found herself looking at the battle with new eyes. The human fleet was down to 8 ships. They were outnumbered 50-1. They had no hope of military victory, but they were still fighting with the same desperate ferocity they had shown from the beginning. "My queen," her tactical officer reported, "the humans have established shield generators around the civilian shelters on the planet. Our ground forces cannot break through." "How many humans are defending the shelters?" "Less than 200, my queen." The Queen stared at the display. 200 humans were holding off 10,000 Vrak warriors. It should have been impossible, but somehow the Deathworlders were managing it. "Show me the ground battle." What she saw defied everything she knew about warfare. The human soldiers were not fighting from fixed positions like civilized armies. Instead, they moved constantly, appearing from unexpected directions to strike at Vrak formations before vanishing again. They used explosives with a casual disregard for their own safety that amazed her. They fought with damaged equipment and insufficient supplies. When their weapons broke, they improvised new ones from scavenged materials. Most shocking of all, they refused to retreat even when faced with overwhelming odds. "My queen," her ground commander reported, "the humans are using their own wounded as bait. They leave injured soldiers in the open, and when our warriors move to finish them, hidden human snipers attack. It is disturbing." The Queen realized that she was watching something the galaxy had not seen in millions of years, a species that viewed war not as a political tool, but as a survival skill. The humans did not fight because they wanted to conquer. They fought because giving up meant death, and death was not acceptable. "Recall all ground forces," she commanded. "My queen, you heard me. Pull back from the planet. We are leaving this system." Her tactical officer's mandibles clicked in confusion. "But my queen, we can still win." The humans cannot hold out much longer. The Queen looked at her officer with ancient, tired eyes. No, we cannot win. Even if we destroy every human ship and kill every human soldier, we will have learned nothing except how to die fighting them. And when word of this battle reaches their homeworld, more will come. She gestured toward the tactical display where the remaining human ships continued their hopeless battle against overwhelming odds. Look at them. They know they cannot win, but they will not stop fighting. They would rather die than let us harm the people they came to protect. How do you defeat an enemy like that? As the Vrak fleet began its withdrawal from the Zephyrian system, the Queen sent one final message to the human forces. Human warriors, this is the Vrak Queen. You have fought with honor today. We withdraw from this system. The innocents you protect will live. The response came from Commander Torres on the planet's surface. We'll remember that you showed mercy, Queen. Maybe next time we meet we can talk instead of fight. The Queen considered this as her flagship jumped to hyperspace. In 3,000 years of conquest, no enemy had ever offered her a chance at peace. Perhaps the legends about the Deathworlders were wrong. Perhaps they were not monsters after all. Perhaps they were something far more dangerous. Warriors with hearts. 3 days after the Vrak withdrawal, the first ships of the Galactic Council's emergency fleet arrived at Zephyria Prime to find a scene that would be remembered for centuries. The planet that had been burning under alien bombardment was now alive with activity. Human engineering teams worked alongside Zephyrian civilians to rebuild damaged cities. Human medical officers treated wounded aliens with the same care they would show their own people. Human ships, battered and scarred from battle, stood guard in orbit while repair crews worked to restore the planet's defenses. Fleet Commander Keth of the Altarian Federation stared at his tactical display with growing amazement. His fleet of 60 advanced warships had taken 4 days to reach the Zephyrian system, expecting to find nothing but wreckage and bodies. Instead, he found the impossible. The Vrak had been defeated by 12 primitive vessels from a quarantined system. Communications. Open a channel to the human commander, Keth ordered. Admiral Chen's face appeared on the main screen. She looked exhausted. Her uniform was stained with blood and soot, and there were fresh bandages on her left arm. Behind her, Keth could see the bridge of a ship that had clearly seen heavy combat. Fleet Commander Keth, Chen said with a tired smile. I'm Admiral Sarah Chen, United Earth Space Force. I assume you're here about the Vrak situation. Keth struggled to find words. In his 2 centuries of military service, he had never seen a ship that had survived the kind of damage visible on Chen's vessel. Admiral Chen, we received reports that 12 human vessels engaged over 200 Vrak ships and forced them to withdraw. Our analysts find this difficult to believe. Chen's smile became sharper. Your analysts weren't here, Commander. We were. The Vrak decided that killing Zephyrian civilians wasn't worth the cost we were making them pay. Before Keth could respond, another voice broke into the communication channel. It was Elder Counselor Thren, speaking from the planet's surface. Fleet Commander Keth, this is Thren. I must tell you, the human fleet saved over 40,000 of our people. They asked for nothing in return. They expected no reward. They came because we needed help, and they stayed until the job was done. Keth looked at his tactical officer, who was analyzing the debris field around the planet. The evidence was undeniable. Dozens of destroyed Vrak vessels floated in space, while only 4 human ships had been lost in the fighting. Admiral Chen, Keth said slowly, the Galactic Council will want to meet with you. There are questions about humanity's return to known space. Chen's expression hardened. I'm sure there are. Tell the Council we'll be happy to talk. But the conversation is going to start with them explaining why they've been hiding from us for 3,000 years. Over the next week, delegations from across the galaxy arrived at Zephyria Prime. The Centauri Alliance sent their finest diplomats. The Andromedan Empire dispatched a full embassy. Even the reclusive ethereal collective emerged from their hidden worlds to witness humanity's return. What they found challenged everything they thought they knew about the universe. Ambassador Joran of the Altarian Federation was the first to tour the human rescue operations. He had expected to find a military occupation, with alien soldiers controlling the local population. Instead, he found human engineers teaching Zephyrian workers how to repair advanced shield generators using simple tools and improvised materials. "This is remarkable," he told Commander Torres as they watched a mixed human Zephyrian construction crew rebuilding a hospital. "Your people are sharing advanced engineering techniques freely," Torres shrugged. "It's not really advanced, Ambassador. We're just good at fixing broken things. When you grow up on a world where everything tries to kill you, you learn to make repairs fast and with whatever materials you have available." Joran studied the human officer. Torres was shorter and stockier than most galactic species. His skin was scarred from radiation exposure, and he moved with the efficient grace of a predator. But his eyes were kind when he looked at the Zephyrian children playing nearby. "Commander, I must ask, why are your people helping so freely? Most species would expect trade agreements, territorial concessions, or technological exchanges in return for military assistance." Torres looked puzzled. "Ambassador, these people called for help. We helped them. What else would we do?" That afternoon, Joran met with Elder Counselor Thren in the rebuilt council chambers. The old Zephyrian was supervising the installation of a new planetary defense system, technology that the humans had freely shared from their own ships. "Elder Thren," Joran said, "I need to understand something. The human fleet that saved your world, they could have demanded anything from your people. You were defenseless, grateful, completely at their mercy. But according to our observers, they have asked for nothing except permission to help rebuild your cities." Thren's four eyes focused on the Altarian diplomat. "Ambassador, you speak as if this surprises you. But I have been watching the humans work alongside our people for days now. They share their food with our hungry. They give medical treatment to our wounded. They teach our children games from their homeworld." The elder gestured toward a window overlooking the city center, where human and Zephyrian families were sharing a meal together in the plaza. "These are not conquerors, Joran. These are people who understand that strength exists to protect the weak." But it was Ambassador Vex of the Ethereal Collective who asked the question that everyone was thinking. She met with Admiral Chen in the command center of the rebuilt orbital station, surrounded by the mixed crews of human and alien technicians who were working together to restore the system's defenses. "Admiral Chen," Vex said in her crystalline voice, "I represent species that have been aware of the galaxy's civilizations for over 50 million years. In all that time, we have never encountered a military force that could defeat the Vrak in direct combat. How did 12 human vessels accomplish what entire starfleets could not?" Chen looked out at the planet below, where the lights of rebuilt cities twinkled in the darkness. "Ambassador, you're asking the wrong question. You want to know how we defeated the Vrak, but that's not what we did. I do not understand. We didn't defeat them. We convinced them that continuing the fight would cost more than they were willing to pay. The Vrak are killers, but they're also survivors. When they realized that humans would rather die fighting than surrender, they chose to look for easier prey." Vex studied the human admiral with her ancient alien senses. What she found there both fascinated and frightened her. "You speak of death so casually. Your entire species seems to view mortality as simply another tactical consideration." Chen smiled sadly. "Ambassador, we come from a world where everything is trying to kill us. We learned a long time ago that the only way to survive is to be tougher than whatever wants us dead. That includes being willing to die for the things we believe in." "And what do humans believe in?" Chen gestured toward the planet where human medics were still treating wounded Zephyrian civilians. "We believe that the strong protect the weak. We believe that when someone calls for help, you answer. We believe that some things are worth dying for." The next day, representatives from the Galactic Council arrived aboard the massive flagship of the combined fleets. Council Speaker Zara, a tall, elegant being from the core worlds, requested a formal meeting with the human leadership. The meeting took place in the newly rebuilt Zephyrian Council chambers. Admiral Chen sat across from 12 alien diplomats, representing the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy. Behind her stood Commander Torres and Captain Rodriguez, both wearing dress uniforms that could not hide their battle scars. "Admiral Chen," Speaker Zara began, "the Council wishes to formally welcome humanity back to galactic civilization. We are prepared to offer your species full membership in the Galactic Union. with all the rights and privileges that entails. Chen leaned back in her chair and studied the alien diplomats. That's very generous, Speaker Zara, especially considering that your predecessors spent 3,000 years pretending we didn't exist. An uncomfortable silence filled the chamber. The council members looked at each other, clearly hoping someone else would answer. Admiral, Zara said finally, the quarantine of the Sol system was a decision made in a different era. Perhaps it was overly cautious, but it was made with the best intentions. Whose intentions? Chen asked quietly. The intentions of the species that were afraid of us. The intentions of leaders who decided it was easier to hide from humans than to deal with us honestly. Commander Torres stepped forward. Speaker Zara, we've been doing some research while we've been here. We've talked to the Zephyrians, the Altarians, even some of the species that requested the original quarantine. Want to know what we found? Zara nodded reluctantly. We found that the galaxy has been dealing with threats like the Vrak for millions of years by running away. Every time an aggressive species shows up, the peaceful civilizations retreat and hope someone else handles the problem. And when that doesn't work, entire star systems get exterminated. Torres gestured toward Elder Thren, who was seated nearby. The Zephyrians sent distress calls to every major power in the galaxy when the Vrak attacked. How many of you responded? The silence in the chamber was deafening. We came, Chen said simply. 12 ships from a quarantine system, responding to a plea from people we'd never met. We came because it was the right thing to do. Speaker Zara straightened in her chair. Admiral, the Council is prepared to make significant concessions to welcome humanity into our organization. We can offer advanced technology, trade agreements, even territorial expansion rights. Chen stood up and walked to the window overlooking the city. In the plaza below, human and Zephyrian children were playing together while their parents worked side by side to rebuild their world. Speaker Zara, I appreciate the offer, but humanity isn't interested in joining an organization that abandoned the Zephyrians to die. But Admiral, surely you understand the benefits of galactic cooperation. I understand that when the Zephyrians called for help you sent nothing. Chen interrupted. When they were dying, you did nothing. When they needed someone to stand between them and extermination, you weren't there. She turned back to face the council delegation. But we were. And the next time someone sends out a distress call, we'll be there again, whether you approve or not. Admiral Chen walked to the door of the chamber, followed by her officers. Before leaving, she paused and looked back at the alien diplomats. The Sol system will remain open to anyone who needs help. But we're not interested in membership in a club that only helps when it's convenient. As the human delegation left the chamber, Elder Thren stood up and addressed the stunned council members. Honored delegates, you came here expecting to find a species that would be grateful for your acceptance. Instead, you found beings who judge you by the same standards they apply to themselves. He gestured toward the window, where the lights of the rebuilt city glowed against the darkness. The humans did not come here to join your civilization. They came to save ours, and in doing so, they have shown us what true strength looks like. 3 months later, the first human embassy opened on the Zephyrian homeworld. It was staffed entirely by volunteers and funded by donations from grateful civilians. The sign above the door, written in dozens of alien languages, reads simply, "When monsters threaten the innocent, call the bigger monsters." Within a year, similar embassies had opened on 17 different worlds throughout the galaxy. Each one carried the same message. Humanity was back in known space and they were watching. The galaxy would never be the same again, and in the dark spaces between the stars, predatory species that had terrorized peaceful civilizations for millions of years began to hear whispers of a new threat. Stories spread of Deathworld warriors who would cross any distance to protect the innocent. Tales were told of beings so stubborn that they would rather die than surrender. The monsters of the galaxy finally had something to fear, because the humans were coming.